I posted this last night, but it was kind of an odd quiet time. My previous posts have gotten better traction in the day, so I cleaned it up and will try once again. I would love some input. I attended a funeral in a very small town. The next day I bumped into the guy who had conducted the services. We ended up talking for almost 2 hours since he had said something during the service which had piqued my interest. Thing 3 below. He is a small town guy. He is an old man, about 80 years old, the pastor of the only church in town, a town of 300 people. By his estimation, he has put 450 to 500 people in the ground over a 50-year career and had sat with about 150 to 200 of them as they had passed. He told me a couple of things that I thought were interesting, and so I thought to share them here to see if anyone had genuine input. First thing. He said that when he sat with the people as they died, he could often tell the exact moment the spirit left the body, and it didn't always correspond to signs of physical death. They may have still be breathing or faintly moving, rattling, etc. This makes sense to me, also from reading that clairvoyant book on Gutenberg, which talks about the two hidden, non-paranormal senses that humans possess, one which is the ability to sense the presence of others in a space or area without physically seeing or hearing them, including the ability to sense a person who has just left a room even several minutes later. And this makes sense medically as well, given that movement in the body continues long after brain death in many cases. Although he did go on to say that he could sometimes see the souls leave the body in a lightness around the eyes and face that dissipated upward. This last part I thought may have been an embellishment for the benefit of the local rubes, but overall, this section resonated as true and reasonable. Second thing, he said he had had 2 visions of deaths at which he was not physically present, but that he saw the moment of death just as it had occurred, and both times were somewhat unusual, traumatic. One was a gentleman who had pulled through an intersection on a motorcycle and had been struck by a van and killed. The preacher said he'd seen a vision of the exact moment the man had flown through the air and been struck in the right shoulder by the panel piece that extends between 2 windows in a van. This had killed him instantly and broken his neck, and he said he had seen his body flying forward through the air and his spirit going upward. This was apparently confirmed in the hospital, where it was shown that the man had suffered massive trauma to the right shoulder and broken his neck. The other death the preacher said he had witnessed was that of a gentleman who was a known drunk around town. This man often would stagger home from the town's only bar at 2 to 3 a.m. One morning in the dead of winter he was found frozen to death in his small shack cabin. Winter in the north is harsh. The preacher said he had a vision of the exact moment in which the guy had stumbled and fallen while trying to put kerosene into the large heater that was sitting 0.5 meters away from the wall, and the guy had drunkenly lurched and fallen behind it, never lighting the heater, which would have saved him from freezing. So again, very oddly specific, but apparently the man was found in the exact same position as the preacher had described. I couldn't verify this, but I would probably ask another local before I believed him on this one. Third thing, this is what he had said while delivering the service, but I asked him about it again, was that he had a heart attack a year or so before and had been dead for 5 or 6 minutes, but that while he was gone, he experienced a different reality, and that it was so different from this reality as to be completely indescribable. Like nothing about heaven that I had ever thought or heard or imagined of, as an exact quote as my memory of a few days ago permits. Keep in mind this is from a small town preacher man who had been raised in that old-time religion, streets of gold, etc. He even said there was no streets at all, forget golden streets, just a lot of lines and shapes that made no sense, but that were beautiful beyond compare and gave him overwhelming peace. This is what he said at the funeral. Here is why I thought this was pretty neat, because this is basically apostasy as far as this guy is concerned, and he is telling it like it is to a bunch of small town folks. It blew my fucking mind. And the way he described his minutes out of his body sounded exactly like a DMT trip, to be quite honest. This is also the part I thought was least likely to be a LARP out of the whole thing. He also said he could see himself returning to his body and could see his spirit body and physical body separately for some time. Now, my thoughts were overall that he was telling the truth. It is possible that it may have all been a LARP, things he said to bolster his legend around town or increase his own air of mysticism. I do tend to think skeptically as regards human motivations, as a person's desire to feel special and powerful can take many forms, and the only thing I am surprised at by now is that I ever expect anyone to be any different. But I did not get a feeling that he was lying, a sense I have developed to a decent degree, so he is either an accomplished liar, which is easy enough in practice, or was telling the truth, or the truth as he interpreted it.